Laura Vance stood in the rain, clutching a plastic bag of clothes, watching the tail lights of her husband's Porsche fade into the distance. Adrian wasn't just leaving. He was erasing 20 years of marriage for a woman half his age, leaving Laura with nothing but debt and a broken lease. He told her she was expired goods. He told her she would never amount to anything without him. He was wrong. 3 weeks later, a single phone call changed everything. A secret inheritance. A staggering $100 million. And when Laura announced her celebratory trip, she didn't just book a flight. She booked a revenge that the entire world, and especially Adrian, would never forget. Buckle up. This is the story of how the discarded wife became the queen of the chessboard. The foyer of the pristine colonial house in Greenwich, Connecticut, smelled of lemon polish and impending doom. Laura stood by the erratic ticking of the grandfather clock, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed the fabric of her worn cardigan. It was a Tuesday usually reserved for grocery shopping and the bridge club, but today the air felt heavy, charged with static electricity that made the fine hairs on her arms stand up. Adrian came down the stairs. He didn't look like a man about to destroy a life. He looked impeccable in his charcoal suit, the one Laura had picked out for him last Christmas. He checked his Rolex, a gift for their 20th anniversary, and sighed a sound of impatience rather than regret. "Laura, we need to stop pretending," Adrian said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly reasonable. "The bags are in the car." "Whose bags?" Laura asked, though she knew. She felt the answer in the pit of her stomach, a cold stone dropping into a deep well. "Yours." Adrian replied, finally meeting her eyes. His gaze was devoid of warmth. It was the look a CEO gives a redundant employee. "I've booked you a suite at the Motel 6 off the interstate for 3 nights. After that, you'll need to make your own arrangements." Laura laughed, a brittle, sharp sound. "This is a joke. You're stressed about the merger. I'll make tea." "It's not the merger, Laura. It's Chloe." The name hung in the air like toxic smoke. Chloe, his personal assistant. The one with the gel manicures and the laugh that sounded like wind chimes. Laura had hosted her for Christmas dinner last year. She had complimented Chloe's earrings. "She's pregnant," Adrian added, delivering the final blow with surgical precision. "And she needs this house. We need this house. It's a better environment for a child." I helped buy this house," Laura whispered. "My salary paid the down payment when you were still a junior associate." Adrian adjusted his cufflinks. "And my salary paid for the renovations, the taxes, the cars, and your lifestyle for the last 15 years since you quit working. My lawyers have looked over the prenup, Laura. You get the jewelry and the Camry. Everything else is tied up in trusts you can't touch. It's ironclad." He walked past her, opening the heavy oak door. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the manicured lawn. A silver Audi pulled into the driveway behind Adrian's Porsche. The window rolled down and Chloe's face appeared. She wasn't gloating. She looked bored, checking her phone, waiting for the nuisance to be removed. "Adrian, please," Laura said, her pride disintegrating. "You can't just throw me out. I have nowhere to go. My mother is in the nursing home. I have $42 in my checking account." "Then you better start budgeting," Adrian said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single key, the key to the 2014 Camry parked on the street. He dropped it on the hallway table. "Goodbye, Laura. Don't make a scene. It's embarrassing." He stepped out into the rain, not looking back. He got into the Porsche. Chloe honked the horn of the Audi, a short, cheerful beep, and they drove off in tandem, a convoy of betrayal. Laura stood in the open doorway, the rain soaking the hem of her skirt. She looked at the marble floors she had scrubbed, the walls she had painted. She walked to the table, picked up the car key, and felt a strange sensation. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was a cold, hard clarity. She walked out to the Camry. It wouldn't start at first. She had to turn the key 3 times. As the engine sputtered to life, she looked back at the house one last time. "Enjoy it while you can, Adrian," she whispered to the windshield. The Motel 6 was exactly as promised, beige smelling of stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner. Laura sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the textured ceiling. The reality of her situation was a physical weight on her chest. For the first week, she operated on autopilot. She found a job at a local diner, the Greasy Spoon, wiping tables and serving coffee to truckers who called her sweetheart and tipped in quarters. It was a far cry from the charity galas and country club luncheons of her former life. Her friends, the wives of Adrian's business partners, had vanished. Margot, her closest confidant for a decade, had sent a single text. "It's complicated, Laura. Adrian is a major investor in Bob's firm. We have to be careful. Best of luck." Blocked. Laura was truly alone. She slept in her clothes to save on heating the room when she eventually moved into a basement studio apartment 3 weeks later. It was a damp, windowless box in the bad part of Bridgeport. The shower dripped constantly, a rhythmic reminder of her weeping bank account. One evening, while scrubbing a particularly stubborn stain of ketchup off a counter at the diner, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Laura wiped her hands on her apron and answered, expecting a debt collector. Adrian had cancelled her credit cards, but somehow bills from the joint account were still finding her. "Is this Mrs. Laura Thorne?" a voice asked. It was deep, gravelly, and unmistakably British. "I use my maiden name now. Laura Bennett," she said, her voice tired. "If this is about the MasterCard bill I told the bank." "This is not a bank, Miss Bennett. My name is Rupert Giles. I am a solicitor calling from London, representing the estate of the late Archibald Sterling." Laura frowned. "I don't know an Archibald Sterling. He was your great-uncle on your father's side. Estranged, I believe, since the late 70s. "My father didn't talk about his family," Laura said. "Look, I'm working. I don't have time for scams." "Miss Bennett, please do not hang up." The voice sharpened. "Mr. Sterling passed away 2 weeks ago. He was eccentric. He made his fortune in rare earth mining and early tech investments. He had no children. His will was quite specific. He wanted his estate to go to the female relative who had endured the most but complained the least. We have been tracking your recent change in circumstances." Laura froze. "You've been watching me. We have investigators. It is standard procedure for an estate of this magnitude. Mr. Sterling despised weak people. He despised whiners. He wanted his legacy to go to someone who could survive the fire." Laura looked around the diner. The neon sign buzzed. A fly landed on the sugar dispenser. And, Rupert Giles paused. "We believe you fit the criteria. We need you to come to the consulate in New York tomorrow morning. Bring your identification." "I can't. I have a shift." "Miss Bennett," Giles said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "I strongly suggest you quit your shift. We are discussing an inheritance that includes a portfolio of real estate in London, Paris, and Dubai, as well as liquid assets totaling $100 million. Laura dropped the phone. It clattered onto the linoleum floor, the battery popping out. The cook, a burly man named Big Sal, looked over. "You okay, Lyd? You look like you saw a ghost." Laura picked up the phone, her hands shaking so hard she could barely snap the back on. She looked at Big Sal. She looked at the dirty rag in her hand. "Sal," she said, her voice trembling. I think I have to go." "You quitting in the middle of the lunch rush?" "Yes," Laura said, untying her apron. She placed it on the counter. "Yes, I am." She walked out of the diner into the bright sunlight. She didn't have money for the train to New York. She checked her wallet. $20, enough for gas. She drove the battered Camry toward the city, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Was it real? Or was this just another cruel cosmic joke? When she arrived at the address, a towering glass skyscraper in Manhattan, she felt woefully underdressed in her thrift store slacks and scuffed loafers. The receptionist looked her up and down with a sneer that reminded her of Chloe. "Name, Laura Bennett. I'm here to see Mr. Giles." The receptionist tapped a manicured nail on the keyboard. Her eyes widened slightly. She picked up the phone. "Mr. Giles, Mrs. Bennett is here. Yes, immediately." She hung up and looked at Laura with newfound respect, or perhaps fear. "Right this way, ma'am. The private elevator." As the elevator ascended, Laura watched the city shrink below her. The cars looked like toys. The people were invisible specks. This is it, she thought. The view from the top. The doors opened into a mahogany-paneled office. Rupert Giles sat behind a desk the size of a small boat. He was an older man, with silver hair and kind eyes. He stood up and extended a hand. "Oh, Miss Bennett, a pleasure." He gestured to a chair. Laura sat gripping her purse. "Is it true?" she asked. "Is it really 100 million? Giles smiled. "After taxes, give or take. There is also the matter of the chateau in the south of France and the penthouse in Tokyo. But before we sign the papers, there is one condition in the will." Laura's heart sank. There's always a condition. Mr. Sterling was a man of theatrical tastes, Giles said, sliding a thick document across the desk. He requested that the beneficiary must not hoard the wealth. You are required to spend at least $1 million on yourself, purely on leisure, and travel within the first 3 months, publicly. He wanted the world to see a Bennett enjoying life. Laura stared at the document. Spending $1 million on herself. She hadn't bought a new pair of shoes in 3 years, because Adrian said it was wasteful. "I think," Laura said, a slow smile spreading across her face. "I can manage that. I can." "Excellent," Giles said. "Now let's discuss the announcement. You see, under the terms, the transfer of funds becomes official only after a public declaration of your intent to travel. A press release, if you will." Laura thought of Adrian. She thought of Chloe and the house in Greenwich. She thought of the friends who had abandoned her. No press release. Laura said, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. "I have a better idea. I'm going to live stream it." Giles raised an eyebrow. "Live stream." "Adrian watches the market news every morning on his tablet. He follows the high society blogs. I'm going to make an announcement that he can't ignore." Laura signed the papers. As the ink dried, she felt the old Laura the doormat, the housewife, the victim dissolve. In her place, something harder, shinier, and infinitely more expensive was taking shape. She walked out of the office with a black Centurion card in her pocket and a check for $50,000 as an advance. The first stop was not a hotel. It was a salon. The second was Chanel. Adrian thought she was expired goods. She was about to show him she was a vintage that he could no longer afford. Laura sat in the back of a black town car, arranged by Mr. Giles. The leather seats were soft-smelling of expensive conditioning cream, a stark contrast to the mildew scent of her Camry. She directed the driver to the Pierre Hotel on Fifth Avenue. If she was going to burn $1 million in 3 months, she had to start with the roof over her head. When she walked into the lobby, she was still wearing her diner slacks and the cardigan that had seen better decades. The crystal chandeliers overhead seemed to vibrate with a frequency that rejected her poverty. Guests in tailored suits and designer dresses glided by, their eyes sliding over her as if she were a smudge on the lens of their perfect lives. She approached the front desk. The concierge, a man with a nose sharp enough to cut glass, looked up. His expression was a masterclass in polite dismissal. "Deliveries are at the side entrance, madam," he said, not bothering to make eye contact. Laura placed her hands on the marble counter. They were rough from scrubbing tables, the nails short and unpolished. "I'm not delivering. I'm checking in." The concierge simulated a sound of profound suffering. "Madame, our rooms start at $800 a night, and we require a credit card for incidentals. Perhaps the hostel downtown would be more." Laura reached into her purse and pulled out the heavy black titanium centurion card Mr. Giles had given her. She slapped it onto the marble with a decisive clack. The concierge stopped. He looked at the card. He looked at Laura. The color drained from his face faster than water from a broken dam. He knew what that card meant. It meant no limit. It meant she could buy the hotel, not just rent a room. "I'd like the Tata suite," Laura said, her voice steady. "And I need a personal shopper, a hairstylist, and a bottle of Bollinger 2008 sent up immediately. Oh, and throw away these clothes. I won't be needing them." "Right away, Miss Bennet," the concierge stammered, typing furiously. "My deepest apologies. We are honored to have you." An hour later, Laura stood in a suite that was larger than the entire house she had shared with Adrian. The windows looked out over Central Park, a sprawling carpet of green amidst the grey steel. She took a sip of the champagne, the bubbles dancing on her tongue. She caught her reflection in the gilded mirror. She looked tired. There were lines around her eyes that Adrian had put there. Lines of worry, lines of trying to be perfect for a man who only wanted new. "Time to erase him," she whispered. The transformation began the next morning. It wasn't just a makeover. It was a renovation. She hired a stylist named Leo, a flamboyant man with an eye for vengeance dressing. "Honey," Leo said, circling her like a shark. "You have great bone structure, but you're hiding behind beige. Who told you to wear beige?" "My husband," Laura said. "He said bright colors were desperate." "Your husband," Leo said, pulling a ruby-red silk gown from a rack, "was a monochromatic idiot. We are going to make you burn his retinas." For 3 days, Laura underwent a metamorphosis. Her hair, dull and grey-streaked, was cut into a sharp, chic bob and dyed a rich, warm chestnut. Her skin was scrubbed, peeled and polished until it glowed. She learned to walk in Louboutins again, the red soles clicking a rhythm of war on the parquet floors. She bought jewelry, not delicate, tasteful pieces Adrian liked, but bold statement pieces. A sapphire necklace that cost more than Adrian's Porsche. A diamond cuff that felt like armor. But the most important purchase wasn't clothing. It was a digital strategy. Mr. Giles had suggested a public announcement, but Laura wanted a weapon. She hired a social media team, 2 young women named Sasha and Jen, who knew exactly how to weaponize envy. "We don't just say you're rich," Sasha explained, tapping on her tablet. "We show the glow up. We create a narrative. You're the phoenix rising. The internet loves a comeback story, especially one involving a cheating ex." "No names," Laura warned. "I don't want to get sued." "We don't need names," Jen smirked. "We just need the vibe. We'll launch the account thefirstwife_unbound. It's mysterious, it's classy, and it's going to drive him in. By Friday, Laura was ready. She looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the sad housewife who had been dumped in the rain. This woman looked powerful, dangerous. She picked up her new phone. It was time to go live. Adrian sat in the corner booth of Le Jardin, the most expensive French restaurant in Greenwich. Across from him, Chloe was complaining about the texture of her escargot. "It's just too rubbery, Artie," she whined, poking the snail with her fork. "And this wine I asked for. The 15, not the 16. You know I get a headache from bad vintages." Adrian massaged his temples. It had been a month since he kicked Laura out. He thought he would feel liberated. Instead, he felt exhausted. Chloe was high maintenance in a way Laura never was. Laura anticipated his needs. Chloe created new ones. The house was a mess because Chloe refused to clean, and they were between housekeepers. He missed his ironed shirts. He missed the quiet. He checked his phone, a habit he couldn't break. He wanted to check the stock market, but a notification from a business associate popped up. "Jerry, have you seen this? It's trending on Twitter. Isn't this your ex?" Adrian frowned. "Laura." Trending impossible. Laura didn't even have a Facebook account. He tapped the link. It opened a live stream on Instagram. The viewer count was climbing rapidly. 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. The video showed a woman sitting on a balcony with the Manhattan skyline glittering behind her. She was wearing a red dress that looked like liquid fire. She held a glass of champagne. She looked stunning. Adrian squinted. It couldn't be. The hair was different. The posture was regal. But the eyes, those were Laura's eyes. "What are you watching?" Chloe asked, leaning over. "Quiet," Adrian snapped. On the screen, Laura smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a court that had just eaten the canary and the canary's entire family. "Good evening." Laura's voice came through the phone speakers, smooth and rich. "For those of you who don't know me, my name is Laura. A month ago, I was told that I was expired goods. I was told that at 45, my life was over. I was traded in for a newer model." Chloe gasped. "Is she talking about me?" "I was left with nothing," Laura continued, swirling her drink. "But the universe has a funny way of balancing the scales. You see, I recently came into a significant inheritance, $100 million to be exact." Adrian choked on his water. He coughed violently, attracting the attention of the waiter. $100 million, and, Laura said, leaning into the camera, "I've decided that saving is for people who are afraid of the future. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm celebrating my freedom. Tomorrow I embark on a trip, the no budget, no baggage tour." She held up a stack of plane tickets. First-class tickets. First stop Paris, staying at the Ritz, then the Maldives, then Tokyo. I'm going to eat at the restaurants my ex-husband said were too expensive. I'm going to wear the clothes he said were too flashy. And I'm going to document every single second of it right here. She paused, and for a second, she looked directly into the lens. Adrian felt like she was looking right through the screen into his soul. "So to the man who thought I was worthless," Laura raised her glass, "thank you. You set me free. And to the woman who took him, you can keep him. I can afford better." The stream ended. The restaurant was silent. Adrian stared at the black screen of his phone. His hand was shaking. $100 million. He did the math in his head instantly. If they were still married, if he hadn't finalized the divorce papers, technically they were separated, not divorced. The prenup protected his assets from her, but did it protect her assets from him? Greed, cold and sharp, pierced through his regret. "She's lying," Chloe said, her voice shrill. "She's lying to make you jealous. She doesn't have money. She was working at a diner last week." "Laura doesn't lie," Adrian whispered. He remembered the grandfather clock. He remembered the furniture she had polished. He remembered the woman who had supported him when he was a nobody. He stood up so abruptly his chair fell over. "Where are you going?" Chloe demanded. "We haven't ordered the main course. I have to make a call," Adrian said, stumbling toward the exit. He left Chloe sitting there with her rubbery snails. He dialed Laura's old number. It went straight to voicemail. "The number you have reached has been disconnected." He cursed and dialed his lawyer. "This is Adrian. I need you to look at the separation agreement again. Specifically, the clause about acquired assets during the separation period. Yes, tonight, I don't care what time it is." Back in the penthouse suite, Laura watched the comments roll in on her new iPad. Thousands of messages. Yas, Queen. Living the dream. Who is the ex? I want to fight him. Sasha and Jen were high-fiving in the background. "We hit 100,000 followers in 20 minutes, Laura. You're viral." Laura put down the iPad. She walked to the window. Her phone, the new one, buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number, but she knew who it was. "Laura. We need to talk. There are things we need to discuss regarding the house. Call me." "Adrian." She laughed. It was the first time she had genuinely laughed in months. She didn't reply. Instead, she blocked the number. "Is everything okay, Ms. Bennett?" Leo asked, adjusting the hem of a coat he was packing for her. "Everything is perfect, Leo," Laura said. "Pack the gold sequins. I think I'll wear them to dinner in Paris." The next morning, the paparazzi were waiting at JFK. They snapped photos of Laura as she stepped out of the limousine wearing oversized sunglasses and a trench coat that cost more than a Honda Civic. She didn't speak to them, only offered a mysterious smile. As the plane lifted off, banking over the Atlantic, Laura looked down at the shrinking coastline. Somewhere down there, Adrian was scrambling. Somewhere down there, he was realizing that he had thrown away a winning lottery ticket. But this trip wasn't about him anymore. It was about finding the Laura who had been lost for 20 years. However, Laura didn't know that Adrian wasn't just calling lawyers. He was desperate, and a desperate man does dangerous things. As she sipped champagne at 30,000 feet, Adrian was booking a flight to Paris on a credit card he couldn't pay off, convinced he could charm his way back into her bank account. The chase was on. Paris in October was a symphony of grey skies and golden leaves, but for Laura Bennett, it looked like victory. She stood on the balcony of the Coco Chanel suite at the Ritz Paris, watching the Place Vendôme below. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts and expensive exhaust fumes. She took a sip of her espresso. It was strong, bitter, and perfect. In her old life, she drank instant coffee because Adrian complained that Nespresso pods were an unnecessary luxury. Now she had a butler named Jean-Luc, who anticipated her caffeine needs before she even opened her eyes. Her phone on the bistro table pinged relentlessly. Her follower count had exploded to 3 million. Every photo she posted, a croissant at Café de Flore, a shopping bag from Hermès, a sunset over the Seine, was dissected by thousands of strangers. They called her the Revenge Queen. They called Adrian the fumble of the century. But Laura wasn't just here to take photos. She was here to learn who she was when she wasn't someone's wife. "Madame," Jean-Luc's voice was soft at the door. "Your guest has arrived." Laura turned. "Send him in." A man walked in. He wasn't a date. He was better. His name was Henri Leclerc, one of the most vicious shark lawyers in France, recommended by Mr. Giles. He was 60, impeccably dressed in navy wool, with eyes that looked like they could appraise a diamond or a soul in seconds. "Mrs. Bennet," Henri said, bowing slightly over her hand. "Mr. Giles tells me we have a pest control problem." Laura smiled. "You could say that. My ex-husband landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport 2 hours ago. He's staying at a budget hotel in the 10th arrondissement. My security team flagged his passport entry." Henri sat down, crossing his legs elegantly. "The 10th is charmingly rustic. I assume he is here to contest the assets." "He thinks he can charm me," Laura said, walking back to the view. "Or threaten me. He doesn't know about the trust structure yet. He thinks this is all just cash sitting in a joint account he can access. Men like that never read the fine print until the gavel bangs," Henri mused. "So what is the plan? A restraining order?" "No." Laura said, her eyes cold. "A restraining order is a piece of paper. I want a public humiliation. He loves an audience. I'll give him one." Adrian Preston was not having a good time in Paris. His credit cards were maxed out. He had managed to scrape together enough cash for a flight and a sordid little hotel room that smelled of damp carpet. He hadn't slept in 24 hours. His suit was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved. He sat on the edge of the lumpy bed, staring at his phone. Laura's latest post was a location tag, Le Jules Verne Eiffel Tower. "Dinner with a view." "Dinner," Adrian muttered. "She's spending my money on dinner." In his mind, it was still his money. It didn't matter that she inherited it. They were married. New York was an equitable distribution state, or so he desperately hoped, ignoring the fact that inheritances were usually separate property. He had convinced himself that if he could just talk to her, just look her in the eye, he could break her. Laura was weak. Laura needed him. She had never pumped her own gas until 10 years ago. She would crumble. He checked his reflection in the cracked mirror. He splashed cold water on his face. "Pull it together, Adrian. You're the closer. You close deals." He left the hotel and hailed a taxi. The driver looked at his rumpled suit with disdain. "Tour Eiffel," Adrian barked, "and step on it." The restaurant Le Jules Verne floated inside the Eiffel Tower, a beacon of gastronomy high above the city. The views were breathtaking. The atmosphere hushed and reverent. Laura sat at the prime table by the window. She was wearing a dress of midnight blue velvet that hugged her new curves, wearing the sapphire necklace she had bought in New York. Across from her sat Henri, posing as a mysterious suitor. They weren't eating. They were waiting. "He's in the elevator," Laura said, glancing at the text from her security detail, stationed in the lobby. "He made a scene at the hostess stand, claiming to be my husband. They are letting him up as instructed." Henri swirled his Pinot Noir. "Showtime." The elevator doors opened. Adrian stormed into the dining room. He looked manic. His eyes scanned the room wildly until they landed on Laura. For a moment he stopped. He almost didn't recognize her. The woman he had left in the rain was grey and shrinking. The woman sitting by the window was radiant, glowing with gold and confidence. She looked younger. She looked expensive. Laura! Adrian's voice boomed, shattering the quiet hum of the restaurant. Diners turned. Forks paused mid-air. Laura didn't flinch. She slowly cut a piece of her foie gras. Adrian marched over to the table, ignoring the waiter trying to intercept him. He slammed his hands down on the white tablecloth, rattling the crystal wine glasses. "I knew it," Adrian hissed, sweat beading on his forehead. "You're here spending our money while I'm dealing with lawyers." "Who is this?" He pointed a shaking finger at Henri. "Is this who you replaced me with?" "Some French gigolo." Henri raised an eyebrow. "Monsieur, I charge 500 euros an hour, but not for that sort of service." "Sit down, Adrian," Laura said. Her voice was calm, conversational, the volume used when discussing the weather. "You're making a scene." "I don't care about a scene," Adrian yelled. "I care about the fact that you stole $100 million. That money belongs to the marital estate. You think you can just run away?" Laura put down her knife and fork. She dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin. Then she looked up at him. "I didn't steal anything, Adrian. My great-uncle left it to me, specifically to me, and specifically excluding any parasitic spouses. It's in the will. Would you like a copy? I have it on my phone." "I'm your husband," Adrian pleaded, his voice cracking. He realized the anger wasn't working. He switched tactics, the masterful manipulator trying to find a foothold. He dropped to his knees. A collective gasp went through the restaurant. "Laura, baby," Adrian said, grabbing her hand. Her skin was cool. "I made a mistake. I was stressed. Chloe, she meant nothing. It was a midlife crisis. I was scared of getting old. But seeing you now, I realize I love you. I've always loved you. Let's go home. We can fix this. We can start over. With the money, think of what we could do." Laura looked down at him. A month ago, this would have worked. A month ago, she would have given anything for him to come back. But now, looking at him kneeling on the floor of a Michelin-star restaurant, begging not for her, but for her bank account, she felt nothing but revulsion. She pulled her hand away, as if she had touched something slimy. "You didn't come here because you love me, Adrian," Laura said, her voice projecting clearly enough for the nearby tables to hear. "You came here because Chloe is high maintenance, and you're broke. You came here because you realized the expired goods are worth more than you'll ever earn in 10 lifetimes." "Laura, please!" "Jean-Luc," Laura called out. From the shadows, 2 large men in suits stepped forward. They weren't waiters. "Escort my ex-husband out," Laura said. "And Adrian, I've cancelled your return ticket. The one you booked on my old credit card number. I flagged it as fraud an hour ago. You might want to start swimming." The security guards grabbed Adrian by the arms. "You can't do this!" Adrian screamed as they dragged him backward. "I built you! You're nothing without me, Laura!" The elevator doors closed on his screaming face. The restaurant was silent. Then slowly, a woman at the next table began to clap. Then a man. Soon the entire room was applauding. Laura took a sip of her wine. Her hand wasn't shaking. "Well," Henri said, lifting his glass. "That was efficient." "Not quite," Laura said, checking her phone. "That was just Act 1. She opened Instagram. She wasn't the only one recording. Half the restaurant had their phones out. The video of Adrian on his knees was already circulating. #begging. Adrian was trending. But there was a notification that caught her eye. A direct message from Chloe. Laura opened it. It was a video. The video appeared to be taken from inside Adrian's apartment in Connecticut before he left. It showed Adrian screaming at his lawyer on speakerphone, saying, "I don't care about the baby, I just need the cash. If Laura has the money, I'll dump Chloe in a heartbeat." Under the video, Chloe had written. He left his iPad logged in. "I hope you destroy him. P.S. Can I have a loan?" Laura stared at the screen. Adrian hadn't just betrayed her. He was planning to betray Chloe, too. He was a creature of pure opportunism. "Henri," Laura said, a dark smile playing on her lips. "How do you feel about the Maldives?" "I prefer the climate in November," Henri replied. "Good. Because we're leaving tonight. But before we go, I have one more post to make." She forwarded Chloe's video to her social media team with a single instruction: post it. Caption: "The truth comes out." As she walked out of the Eiffel Tower, the wind whipping her coat, Laura felt the final tether snap. Adrian wasn't a tragedy anymore. He was a punchline. But as she got into the car, she didn't notice the black sedan pulling out behind them. It wasn't Adrian. Adrian was currently being thrown out of the tower security perimeter. This was someone else. Someone who had been reading the news about the $100 million widow, a nickname the press had wrongly adopted. In the back seat of the sedan, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow watched Laura's car merge into traffic. He picked up a burner phone. "Target is mobile," he said. "She's heading to the airport. The ex-husband is out of the picture. It's a clean grab." Laura thought the drama was her husband. She didn't realize that having $100 million and broadcasting your location to the world attracted predators far more dangerous than a greedy corporate lawyer. The real trip was just beginning, and this time it wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. The Maldives is not just a destination. It is a hallucination of blue. Laura Bennett sat on the deck of her overwater villa at the Waldorf Astoria Ithafushi, her legs dangling over the edge, toes skimming the turquoise Indian Ocean. It was quiet here, the kind of quiet that cost $5,000 a night. After the chaos of Paris, the paparazzi, the confrontation with Adrian, the viral fame, this isolation felt like medicine. She had left Henri Leclerc in France to handle the legal fallout of Adrian's harassment, deciding to continue the no-budget tour solo. She wanted to feel the weight of her own company without a man's shadow looming over her. She checked her phone. The service was spotty, but the notifications were relentless. The video of Adrian begging at the Eiffel Tower had been remixed into a dance track on TikTok. #begging. Adrian was now a global meme. It was satisfying, yes, but it also left a hollow ache in her chest. 20 years of marriage reduced to a hashtag. She swiped to her banking app. The balance was still astronomical. She had spent $200,000 in Paris, barely a dent in the mandatory $1 million she had to burn. "Time to up the stakes," she murmured. She called the concierge. "I'd like to charter the yacht for a sunset cruise, and I want the private chef to prepare a tasting menu of rare seafood. Oh, and invite the resort manager. I hate dining alone." 3 hours later, Laura was aboard the Siren's Call, a 60-foot luxury vessel, slicing through the deep indigo waters. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in violent shades of violet and orange. The champagne was cold, the breeze was warm. But something was wrong. The crew was new. The concierge had mentioned the usual captain, a jovial man named Captain Ahmed, was out sick. The replacement, a man with a thick scar running through his left eyebrow, who introduced himself as Kyle, had eyes that didn't smile. He watched Laura with the intensity of a hawk circling a field mouse. Laura took a sip of her drink, her instincts pricking. Living with Adrian, a man who lied as easily as he breathed, had sharpened her intuition. She noticed Kyle texting on a satellite phone, his back turned to her. She noticed the deckhand locking the cabin door from the outside. "Captain," Laura called out, her voice steady. "I think I've seen enough. Let's head back." Kyle turned. He didn't move toward the wheel. He walked toward her. "We aren't going back yet, Mrs. Bennet. We have a detour." Laura stood up, gripping the railing. "Excuse me. You posted your itinerary on Instagram." Kyle said, his voice flat. "You told the world you were alone. You told the world you have access to millions. Did you think no one was watching through?" The other deckhand, a burly man with a tattoo on his neck, stepped forward, holding a length of zip ties. Terror, cold and sharp, washed over her. This wasn't a bad date or a legal dispute. This was a kidnapping. They were going to take her to some uninhabited atoll, drain her accounts, and leave her for the crabs. Laura's mind raced. She looked at the water. Too far to swim. She looked at the satellite phone on the table. Out of reach. She looked at Kyle. "How much?" Kyle paused. "What? How much are they paying you?" Laura asked, channeling the icy demeanor of a CEO. She forced herself to sit back down and cross her legs, despite every nerve in her body screaming to run. "Whoever hired you, or if you're doing this freelance, what's the payout? 5 million, 10? "Shut up," the deckhand spat. "Grab her." "I'll give you 20 million, Laura said. The number hung in the salt air. Kyle stopped the deckhand with a raised hand. "You're bluffing. I have a black Centurion card in my purse and a satellite banking fob that allows transfers up to 50 million instantly," Laura lied smoothly. The limit was actually lower, but they didn't know that. "I can transfer it to a crypto wallet right now. No tracing, no police. You drop me off at the next island, and you retire. Or you can kidnap me, deal with the international manhunt that my lawyers will launch in about 2 hours when I miss my check-in, and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." Kyle looked at the deckhand. Greed warred with suspicion in his eyes. "Show me," Kyle said. Laura reached into her purse slowly. She pulled out the phone. "I need the Wi-Fi password for the boat's satellite link." Kyle gave it to her. He watched the screen as she logged into the Swiss bank portal. He saw the balance. $99,450,000. His eyes widened. 20 million, Laura repeated. "Right now, if you turn this boat around." Kyle licked his lips. "Do it." Laura began typing, but she wasn't entering a crypto address. She was typing a message to the emergency contact number Henri Leclerc had programmed into her phone for extreme contingencies. SOS, yacht sirens call, hostage, coordinates attached. She hit send. "It's processing," she said, looking up. "The signal is slow." "Hurry up," Kyle growled, stepping closer. Suddenly, a low hum vibrated in the air. It grew louder, a thumping rhythm that shook the champagne flutes. Kyle looked up. A black helicopter, unmarked, banked sharply out of the sunset, its searchlight blinding them. "What did you do?" Kyle screamed, lunging for her. Laura didn't wait. She grabbed the champagne bottle, heavy, crystal expensive, and swung it with all her might. It connected with Kyle's temple with a sickening crunch. He collapsed onto the teak deck. The deckhand froze, looking from his fallen leader to the helicopter hovering just 50 feet above the water, the downdraft whipping the ocean into a frenzy. A loudspeaker boomed. "This is private security. Lay down your weapons." The deckhand dropped the zip ties and raised his hands. Laura stood over the unconscious captain. her chest heaving, the broken champagne bottle still in her hand. She looked at the chopper, then at the terrified deckhand. "I'm rescinding the offer," she said coldly. "You get nothing." When the security team rappelled down, hired by the resort's panic protocol, which Henri had secretly activated days ago, they found Laura Bennett not in tears, but pouring herself a fresh glass of wine with shaking hands. She had survived Adrian. She had survived the sharks. She was done being the victim. "Get me off this boat," she told the lead commando. "I have a flight to catch. Tokyo is waiting." Tokyo was a sensory overload of neon rain and efficiency. It was the final stop. The deadline for the inheritance clause, spend $1 million in 3 months, was 3 days away. Laura had spent heavily, but she was still short by $200,000. She checked into the Aman Tokyo, a sanctuary of stone and silence high above the chaotic city. She felt different now. The woman who had landed in Paris was pretending to be strong. The woman in Tokyo was strong. The incident in the Maldives had forged her in fire. She moved with a predator's grace, her eyes scanning rooms, assessing threats, calculating exits. But the final threat wasn't a gunman. It was a ghost from her past. On her second night, as she prepared for a gala dinner, where she planned to buy a rare vintage kimono to hit her spending target, the front desk called. "Ms. Bennett," the receptionist said. "There is a gentleman here. He says he is your husband. He is causing a disturbance." Laura sighed. Adrian. He was like a cockroach. Nuclear war wouldn't kill him, just make him more desperate. "Let him up," Laura said. "But leave the door open and have security stand by." Adrian Preston looked like a man who had been chewed up by the world and spat out. His suit was stained. He had lost weight. The arrogance that had defined him for 20 years was gone, replaced by a frantic, twitching energy. He had clearly sold everything he owned to chase her here. He walked into the suite, his eyes darting around the luxury. "Laura," he croaked. "Adrian," Laura said, standing by the window, the Tokyo Tower glowing orange in the distance. "You look terrible." "I lost my job," Adrian said, his voice trembling. "After the video, the partners here voted me out. Morality clause. I'm ruined, Laura. Chloe left me. She took the car. She took the apartment keys. I'm sleeping in a capsule hotel in Shinjuku." Laura felt a flicker of pity, but she snuffed it out instantly. She remembered the rain. She remembered the expired goods comment. "Why are you here, Adrian?" "I want to make a deal," Adrian said, pulling a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "I know about the inheritance conditions. I read the tabloids. You have to spend money, right? You have to spend it on leisure. Well, I'm a leisure expense." "Excuse me. Hire me," Adrian said, a manic grin spreading across his face. "As your consultant, your assistant, anything. Pay me the $200,000 you need to spend. It fulfills your clause, and it saves me. I'll do anything. I'll carry your bags. I'll walk behind you. I'll sign an NDA. Laura stared at him. The man who had once forbidden her from speaking when his colleagues were over was now begging to be her servant. It was pathetic. It was tragic. And it gave her an idea. "You want to be my employee?" Laura asked. Yes, please." "I do need to spend $200,000, Laura mused. "But I don't need an assistant. I have a team for that. However, I do need a closing act." "A closing act?" Laura walked to her desk and picked up a heavy folder. "You see, Adrian, I didn't just spend money on clothes and hotels. I made some investments. My uncle's lawyers are very good. We bought a controlling stake in a certain firm. Preston Miller and Associates." Adrian's knees buckled. He grabbed the back of a chair. You own my firm." "I own the firm that fired you," Laura corrected. "And as the majority shareholder, I have some thoughts on restructuring." She dropped the folder on the table. "I'm not going to give you money, Adrian. That would be enabling you. And frankly, you're not worth $200,000. Adrian slumped. "Then what? Why did you let me up here?" "To give you this," Laura said, sliding a single envelope across the table. Adrian opened it. It was a plane ticket. Economy class. One way. To Ohio. "Ohio," Adrian whispered. "My mother's nursing home is there," Laura said softly. "The one you said was too expensive to visit. The one you tried to move her out of to save money. I've paid for her care for the next 10 years. Your job, Adrian, if you want to avoid me suing you for the alimony fraud you committed during our separation, is to go there. You are going to visit her every Sunday. You are going to bring her flowers. And you are going to listen to her stories. And if I don't, then I release the rest of the videos Chloe sent me," Laura said. "The ones where you discuss embezzling from your clients. You'll go to prison, Adrian. Ohio is a better option." Adrian looked at the ticket. He looked at Laura. He saw the steel in her eyes. He realized finally that he had lost. He wasn't the protagonist of this story. He was just a footnote. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." He took the ticket and walked to the door. He paused, hand on the handle. "Laura, did you ever really love me?" "I did," Laura said, turning back to the window. "But that was a different Laura. She doesn't live here anymore." Adrian left. The door clicked shut. Laura let out a long breath. She checked her watch. It was almost midnight. She still had $200,000 to spend to secure the $100 million. She picked up her phone and dialed Henri. "Henri, wake up. I know how to spend the rest." "Is it a Diamond AA car?" Henri asked sleepily. "No," Laura said, smiling as she looked out at the glittering city. "I'm buying the diner. The Greasy Spoon in Bridgeport. I'm going to turn it into a shelter and culinary school for women, starting over. Women like me." "That is not exactly a leisure expense, Laura," Henri warned. "Oh, but it is," Laura said. "Watching women succeed where men told them they would fail. That's my idea of pure pleasure." 6 months later. The grand opening of the Bennett Foundation was the social event of the Connecticut season. The building, formerly a run-down diner, was now a gleaming space of glass and light. Laura Bennett stood at the podium wearing a simple white suit. She looked out at the crowd. There were cameras, yes, but there were also faces she recognized. Big Sal was there, wearing a fresh chef's coat, now the head instructor. Margot, the friend who had blocked her, was in the back, looking sheepish and trying to catch Laura's eye. Laura didn't look at her. She looked at the front row. There sat a group of women, young, old, tired, scared. Women who were clutching plastic bags of clothes. Women who had just left. Laura leaned into the microphone. "They will tell you that you are expired," she said, her voice ringing clear. "They will tell you that you are nothing without them. They will try to break you." She smiled, and it was the smile of a woman who had walked through fire and come out holding gold. "Let them try, because the best revenge isn't destroying them, it's building yourself." She cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. Far away in Ohio, a man in a wrinkled suit sat in a nursing home reading a book to an old woman who was asleep. He looked at the TV in the corner, broadcasting the news of Laura's foundation. He saw her smile. He turned the page, and for the first time in his life, he was quiet. Laura Bennett had taken the trip of a lifetime. But the destination wasn't Paris or the Maldives or Tokyo. The destination was freedom. Wow. From a Motel 6 to $100 million empire. Laura didn't just inherit money. She inherited a spine of steel. She taught Adrian and the world that you never, ever underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. Adrian ended up in Ohio reading bedtime stories, and Laura ended up saving the world one expired woman at a time. That is what I call justice. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of revenge, luxury, and karma smash, that like button right now. It helps the channel so much, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a story. What would you do with $100 million if your ex tried to crawl back? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.